A millionaire attacks a homeless mother and her child, but what happens next will leave you speechless. The heavy snow blanketed the city, turning once familiar streets into a chilly maze of white. In the back seat of his sleek car, Ethan Miller sat hunched over, his eyes constantly flicking to his watch. His nerves about the upcoming meeting sent his heart racing. Up front, the driver navigated the icy roads with deliberate care, his tense expression mirroring the pressure of trying to make it on time. "Do you think we'll get there?" Ethan asked, his voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the heater. "I'll do my best, sir," the driver replied, his gaze fixed ahead. "But in weather like this, nothing's certain." And then it happened. Out of the swirling snow, a shadow appeared, a figure darting across the street. A muffled cry, a dull thud, and the car screeched to a stop. Ethan's pulse pounded as he jumped out of the car. In front of him, a woman crouched low, clutching a baby tightly to her chest. Her wide, frightened eyes met his. "Are you okay?" Ethan asked, extending a hand toward her. I think so," she stammered, her grip firm on the baby as she cautiously accepted his help. "I just got scared." "Are you sure? Let me take you to a doctor just to be safe," Ethan urged, sensing the fragility of the moment. The woman hesitated, then shook her head. "No, we're fine. I think we just need to warm up." "Then come with me," Ethan said firmly, though his tone was soft. "I can't leave you out here in this storm. I'll get you somewhere safe." Gently, he helped the woman and her child into the car. The driver glanced back at Ethan in the rearview mirror, his unspoken question clear. "We're going to be late for the meeting," Ethan said, answering the look. "But this is more important." "What's your name?" Ethan asked as they settled in. "Grace," she replied, her voice cautious. "And this is my daughter, Lily." "You don't need to worry," the driver reassured them. "Mr. Ethan is a good man." Later, Ethan sat at a polished table, surrounded by serious men in expensive suits. He offered a quick apology. "I'm sorry for the delay, gentlemen. There was an emergency, but I'm here now. Let's get started." Yet his thoughts drifted back to Grace and Lily. Were they okay? Was Lily scared? Was Grace wondering why a stranger had shown them such kindness? Meanwhile, following Ethan's instructions, the driver had taken Grace and Lily to a nearby diner. "What can I get you?" he asked, his voice warm. "A hot coffee would be wonderful," Grace said, holding Lily close to shield her from the lingering cold. "And for the little one?" he asked, smiling at Lily, whose curious eyes took everything in. "Maybe some milk?" Grace asked, her eyes scanning the menu with the tender focus of a mother who wants only the best for her child, even in the toughest of moments. After their meal, the driver brought them to a nearby grocery store. "Grab whatever you need," Mr. Miller urged, stepping in to help Grace gather essentials: food, diapers for Lily, and even a small toy to lift the little girl's spirits after the long, stressful night. Once they finished shopping, the ride back was calm, the silence interrupted only by the soft sound of Lily's breathing as she dozed in Grace's arms. When they arrived to pick up Ethan, he couldn't help but notice the peaceful look on Lily's face and the quiet gratitude in Grace's expression. In that moment, something stirred in him, a warmth he hadn't expected. "You'll stay safe at one of my properties tonight," Ethan told her firmly but kindly. "It's empty right now, and I won't take no for an answer." Grace hesitated at first, but the earnestness in his voice and the biting cold outside convinced her to accept. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice weighed down by emotions she couldn't fully express. The house was far more welcoming than Grace had dared to imagine, a comforting change from the harsh indifference of the streets. Ethan and his driver made sure Grace and Lily had everything they needed to settle in for the night. The next morning, as Ethan's car cruised through the city toward his office, his thoughts kept circling back to Grace and Lily. A mix of concern and curiosity gnawed at him. Acting on impulse, he instructed the driver to reroute to the house where they had stayed. When they arrived, Ethan asked the driver to wait outside and approached the door with a hint of hesitation. Grace answered, clearly surprised to see him again, so soon. "Mr. Ethan, I didn't expect you," she said, holding Lily close. "Thank you for your kindness, but we don't want to impose. We're leaving," she added, her voice trembling slightly. "There's no need for that," Ethan replied gently. "Stay a little longer, please. I just wanted to make sure you're comfortable here, and I brought some extra supplies you might need," he said, lifting the bags in his hands. Grace smiled, her gratitude lighting up the room. "That's incredibly thoughtful of you. Please come in." As Grace prepared some tea, Ethan couldn't help but notice how the house already felt warmer, more alive, even after just one night. They sat down, and as the tea steamed between them, conversation began to flow. "How did you end up in this situation?" "If you don't mind me asking," Ethan said softly, placing his cup down with care. Grace exhaled deeply, her eyes fixed on the teacup in her hands. "It's not a pleasant story," she admitted. "My husband, he left us, lost everything to gambling, money, our home, everything we had, and now it's just me, trying to scrape by, to give Lily something close to a real life." Ethan nodded. "First of all, drop the Mr. Just Ethan is fine. We're probably not far apart in age anyway," he added with a reassuring smile. "But getting back to your story, that's awful, Grace." "I'm so sorry you had to go through that," Ethan said, his voice genuinely compassionate. "I've had to be strong because of Lily. She's my whole world. But some days it's just overwhelming," Grace admitted, a single tear slipping quietly down her cheek. "You're unbelievably strong, Grace. And I want to help more, if you'll let me. Not just by giving you a place to stay, but by helping you start fresh," Ethan offered, his tone firm with determination. Grace looked at him, searching his eyes for honesty. "Why? Why would someone like you care?" "Because everyone deserves another chance. And for the first time, I feel like I can really make a difference. Let me help, Grace." As their conversation found a shared understanding, the sharp ring of Ethan's phone suddenly interrupted the peaceful morning. Ethan glanced at the screen, his expression shifting quickly as he saw Central Hospital light up. "Sorry, I need to get this," he said hurriedly. Ethan Miller speaking. "Mr. Miller, this is Central Hospital. Your mother, Carmen Miller, had a fall at home. She's stable, but she broke her leg. We recommend you come in as soon as possible." Ethan felt a weight drop in his chest. "I'll be there right away. How is she? Is she conscious?" "Yes, sir. She's awake and stable. The doctor will explain everything once you're here." Ending the call, Ethan turned back to Grace, his face a mix of worry and urgency. "My mum's had an accident. I've got to go." "Of course. Go take care of her." "I hope she's okay," Grace said, her tone filled with understanding. At the hospital, Ethan was directed straight to his mother's room. Carmen was lying in bed, her leg immobilized, but her expression as resolute as ever. "Ethan, my dear." "Look at me," she joked, trying to ease the tension with a smile. "Mum, you gave me a scare." "How are you feeling?" Ethan asked, taking her hand. "I've had better days, but Dr. Mendez says I'll be fine." "Just a little hiccup," Carmen replied, her optimism shining through. Just then, Dr. Mendez stepped into the room. "Mr. Miller, your mother was fortunate. It was a clean fracture, and we've already set it. We'll keep her under observation today, but she should be able to go home in a few days." "Thank you, Doctor. Is there anything special we should do for her at home? Ethan asked, eager to make sure his mother recovered fully. She'll need to stay off her leg for a few weeks and start physical therapy soon, but with proper care and rest, she should recover completely, Dr. Mendez explained. Ethan nodded, relieved. We'll do everything we need to. Thank you, Doctor. Turning back to Carmen, Ethan smiled warmly. Looks like you're stuck with me at home for a while, Mum. Carmen chuckled softly. Poor me, having to put up with you at home. But you know, it got me reflecting on how fragile life really is, how much we need each other. Ethan, I hope you're also prioritizing yourself, not just work. I am, Mum. Actually, something happened yesterday that really made me think about that. Ethan paused, his thoughts drifting to Grace and Lily, and how unexpectedly life had shifted. Go on, my son. It's never too late to learn something new, Carmen urged gently. Her kind eyes encouraged Ethan to open up. Well, Mom, it all began in the most unexpected way. Last night, on my way to a meeting, our car, we nearly hit a woman and her little girl. Ethan hesitated, searching for the right way to explain. Carmen reached out and held his hand, her touch filled with reassurance. My goodness, Ethan. Are they okay? Yes, they're fine. It was just a close call. But, Mum, there was something about them. Grace, that's her name, and her daughter Lily. They left a mark on me I can't quite put into words. They're going through a tough time, living on the streets. Carmen listened carefully, her eyes now mirroring the concern in her heart. And what did you do, Ethan? I did what I thought was right. I let them stay in one of our empty properties, just for the night. But after talking with Grace and hearing her story, Mom, I couldn't just walk away. I felt I needed to step in and do more, Ethan said, his voice carrying an unusual resolve. That's incredibly kind of you, Ethan. You've always had such a big heart. But what are you planning to do next? Carmen asked, proud of her son but also a little worried about what this might mean. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I want to help them rebuild, maybe get Grace a job, and find them a safe, permanent place to live. I just can't look the other way after hearing everything they've been through. Carmen smiled, a mix of admiration and maternal concern on her face. You're a good man, Ethan. Just don't take on too much. Helping others is admirable, but you also need to look out for yourself. I know, Mom, and I will. But for some reason, helping Grace and Lily feels like I'm doing something that really matters, something more meaningful than just business or making money. Then I'm proud of you, Ethan. Just make sure your intentions are steady and not just a fleeting act of kindness. People in vulnerable situations, like Grace and Lily, need stability. I promise, Mum, I'll think it through and handle this the right way, Ethan said firmly, his determination evident. Carmen, despite the ache in her leg, felt a warmth spread through her heart as she watched her son's earnestness. Then you have my full support, dear. Maybe we can even work together to do more for Grace and Lily. That night, Ethan lay in bed, restless and consumed by thoughts of the path ahead. With thoughts swirling about his mom's health and the uncertain future for Grace and Lily, Ethan found himself restless as the first rays of daylight crept through the curtains. An idea started to form in his mind, sharp and undeniable, as the morning light brightened. Over a quiet cup of coffee with his mom the next day, he broached the topic with a mix of hope and caution. Mum, I've been thinking about your recovery, and also about helping someone who could really use a fresh start, Ethan said, carefully observing her reaction. Carmen, ever attuned to the nuances in a conversation, tilted her head slightly, encouraging him to continue. Go on, son. Well, Ethan began, you remember Grace, the woman I mentioned yesterday. She's been looking for work and a way to start over. It got me thinking. Maybe she could help us. and we could help her. He spoke slowly, wanting his mum to grasp the heart of his idea. Carmen's eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise, but her tone remained open. "You mean hiring Grace to help me while I recover?" she asked. "Exactly," Ethan confirmed. "She could take care of the chores the cook and cleaner can't handle. And later, maybe even join you at your therapy sessions. We'd make sure she's fully trained to help you properly," Ethan explained, leaning forward slightly, his eagerness evident. Carmen paused, reflecting on the proposal's potential. "That's not something I would have expected, Ethan, but I trust your judgment. And if it gives Grace and her daughter a hand up too, then yes, let's talk to her." Feeling buoyed by his mom's openness, Ethan wasted no time reaching out to Grace. He explained the arrangement and proposed a meeting to iron out the details. When Grace arrived with Lily in tow, the initial tension was unmistakable, but Carmen's natural warmth quickly eased the atmosphere. "Grace, thank you for coming," Carmen began, her voice steady but inviting. "Ethan has told me a bit about your situation, and I'd like to offer you an opportunity." Grace, visibly nervous but deeply grateful, answered with sincerity. "I'll do my best to help, ma'am, and I'm more than willing to learn whatever's necessary." Carmen smiled warmly. "Please call me Carmen. And don't worry about experience. We'll make sure you're trained. What matters most is your willingness to help and that we can trust each other," she said, reaching out her hand in a gesture of agreement. Ethan chimed in. "We'd also offer you a place to stay. Sometimes I work late, and it'd mean a lot knowing someone's here with Mom. Plus, I'll bring in a nurse to train you while she's still in the hospital, so you'll be ready when she comes home." "Think of it as a fresh start," he said with a smile. Overwhelmed by their generosity, Grace struggled to find the words. "I don't know how to thank you," she managed, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're giving us another shot, and I swear I'll give it my all." "That's all we hope for, Grace," Carmen replied, with a warm smile. As weeks went by, a bond grew between Grace and Carmen, built on mutual trust and understanding. Grace's patience and dedication proved invaluable, and Carmen found a sense of happiness and comfort in her presence throughout her healing process. "Carmen, how about we try standing today?" Grace suggested one morning as she finished helping Carmen with her breakfast in bed. "Do you think I can manage?" Carmen asked, her voice both uncertain and determined. "Absolutely. Let's take it slow and steady," Grace encouraged, extending her hand. With deliberate care, Grace helped Carmen out of bed and into the wheelchair. The moment Carmen managed to sit up without assistance felt like a victory for them both. "See? I told you we could do it," Grace said, beaming. "You're incredible, Grace. I couldn't imagine doing this without you," Carmen replied, her tone filled with gratitude. Lily, nestled comfortably in her stroller, a thoughtful gift from Carmen, watched quietly from a corner. The peaceful morning, punctuated by little successes, was soon interrupted by a surprise visitor. Carmen's goddaughter, Vanessa. Vanessa, an energetic young woman with sparkling eyes, had returned from a trip after hearing about her godmother's accident. "Oh, godmother, how are you?" Vanessa exclaimed, rushing to hug Carmen before noticing Grace nearby. "I'm improving, thanks to Grace here. She's been my caretaker," Carmen said, smiling proudly. Vanessa turned to Grace, her smile warm and inviting. "Thank you for taking care of her. I'm Vanessa, by the way. And you are?" "Grace," she replied, matching Vanessa's friendly tone. "Nice to meet you." Their conversation flowed easily, filled with laughter as Carmen reminisced about stories from Vanessa's childhood. But soon, Vanessa's attention shifted. "And how is Ethan? He must be worried sick about you," Vanessa said, her curiosity barely concealed. "Ethan has been wonderful. He's busy, of course, but he always makes sure to be home for dinner, Carmen answered, giving Grace a knowing look. Grace picked up on Vanessa's keen interest in Ethan, and Carmen didn't miss it either. He must be excited to see you, Carmen added, a subtle note of tension in her voice. Vanessa laughed, her voice bright and melodic. I hope so. He's always so busy, but I like to think he still remembers his favorite friend. When Ethan arrived later, his interactions with Vanessa were polite, but marked by her clear attempts to capture his attention. Carmen noticed, and so did Grace. Looks like Vanessa's back, Ethan remarked quietly to Grace as he helped with Carmen's therapy exercises. She seems thrilled to see you, Grace replied, her tone calm but observant. Vanessa's family, Ethan said, his expression neutral yet thoughtful. But sometimes it feels like she sees our relationship differently, Ethan admitted, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Grace gave a reassuring nod. Well, she said thoughtfully, the key thing is to be upfront about how you feel, no matter what. Ethan's expression softened, grateful for her insight. You always have the right words, Grace. Thanks. Vanessa announced she'd be staying a week to assist with Carmen, an offer that initially seemed thoughtful. However, her motives soon became clear. Over the next few days, she subtly undermined Grace, taking over Carmen's care and creating a wedge between them. One warm afternoon, while Carmen rested, Vanessa and Grace found themselves alone in the kitchen preparing tea. So, Grace, Ethan mentioned you two met under pretty dramatic circumstances, Vanessa said casually, pouring her tea. It wasn't exactly ordinary, Grace replied carefully. And before this, what did you do? You know, your life before Ethan, Vanessa continued, her eyes fixed on Grace. Grace hesitated, feeling the weight of the question. I had a simple life. I worked and raised my daughter. Ah, yes, your daughter. And her father. Is he still around? Vanessa pressed, her curiosity barely masked. Grace's face tightened as she shook her head. No. He left. Vanessa smiled faintly, but her gaze held no warmth. What a pity. Life has a way of being unpredictable, doesn't it? That frosty morning, the garden, usually a haven of peace and laughter for Grace and Lily, felt different, weighed down with unease. The crisp air, which normally invigorated, now seemed heavy with tension. It was then Richard appeared, his silhouette framed by the golden morning light. Grace's heart pounded as recognition set in, a mix of fear and disbelief flooding her senses. Richard, how did you find me? Her voice quivered, betraying her shock and the dread of his presence. Richard stepped closer, exuding an unfamiliar confidence. Oh, Grace, did you really think you could disappear? The world isn't so big when you know where to look. And, of course, it helps to have the right connections. Grace instinctively positioned herself between Richard and Lily, who was now watching the stranger curiously. You don't have connections, Richard. What do you want? I'm here for what's mine, he said, with a smirk, scanning the house with a disdainful glance that barely concealed his envy. You seem to have done well for yourself. This big house, all this wealth. I want my cut, and I want Lily. His words hit Grace like a punch to the gut. Your cut. You left us with nothing. You abandoned us, Richard. You have no claim to anything here, and you'll never have Lily. Richard's lips curled into a sly smile as he stepped closer. You seem to have forgotten how things work, Grace. I'm her father, and if you don't cooperate, well, there are ways to turn situations in my favor. The fear Grace felt at that moment was almost tangible. You will not take my daughter, she declared, her voice steadying even as her heart raced. I will fight with everything I have. We'll see about that, Richard replied, his icy glare piercing through her, before he turned and walked away. Each step he took seemed to leave behind an unspoken menace. As soon as he disappeared from view, Grace rushed to Lily, pulling her close and holding her as tightly as she could. Tears streamed down her face, unchecked, but she tried to shield her daughter from the storm raging inside her. She knew this wasn't the end. Far from it. To protect the most precious part of her life, she would need all the strength and support she could muster. In that quiet moment, as Lily clung to her, Grace made a silent vow. She would do whatever it took to keep her child safe. Later that evening, the Miller house was cloaked in stillness, broken only by the faint light spilling from the living room. There, Ethan found Grace sitting alone, her thoughts far away. The soft moonlight streaming through the window highlighted the worry etched into her face, making her seem even more fragile. He approached, settling next to her on the couch, a gesture that felt natural, yet charged with a quiet intensity. "You've been distant since I got home," he said gently, his tone inviting trust. "What's going on, Grace? Talk to me." Her eyes met his, searching for the courage to speak. "It's Richard, my ex-husband," she began, her voice trembling but resolute. "I don't know how he tracked me down, but he came here today." She hesitated, her words faltering before spilling out. "He wants money, and he threatened to take Lily." Hearing Richard's name made Ethan's expression harden. His protective instincts flared to life. "He can't do that. We won't let him," he said firmly, his conviction unwavering. "I'm scared, Ethan," Grace admitted, her voice breaking under the weight of her fears. "He seemed so confident, like he knows something I don't. What if he really can take her from me?" Ethan reached out, taking her hands in his, a gesture of solidarity and strength. "Grace, look at me," he urged, waiting until her eyes met his again. "You're not alone in this. We'll fight him together, and we'll win. Richard doesn't stand a chance against us." Something shifted between them in that moment. The shared vulnerability, the physical closeness, and the determination to stand united created an unspoken connection. What had been quietly growing between them now felt undeniable, as though the crisis had revealed feelings neither had fully recognized before. "Ethan, Grace hesitated, her voice soft. "I don't know what I would have done without you today. I was afraid to tell you. I considered saying goodbye to Mrs. Carman and just running away. But you're my strength when I need it most," Grace admitted softly, her voice carrying a new, deeper emotion. "Grace, you've made me see the world in a way I'd forgotten." Ethan's tone was full of sincerity as he continued, "Being with you, facing this together, I've come to realize how much you mean to me." Their eyes met, the moment stretching as if time itself paused. In that silence, everything else seemed to vanish. Ethan felt the urge to kiss her, but stopped himself. Grace, overwhelmed, felt a comforting warmth spread through her chest. "I feel the same, Ethan," she confessed, her voice trembling with the rawness of her emotions. "I was scared, but knowing you were there gave me hope." Moved by an undeniable pull, Ethan gently lifted Grace's face, his eyes locking with hers. His feelings were clear now, reflected in her gaze. "Then we're in this together, not just against Richard, but for whatever's ahead." Grace nodded, a tentative smile breaking through her tears, her expression a mix of relief and joy. Together she agreed, squeezing his hand as if sealing a pact. In that moment, their fears of Richard and the complexities of their situation seemed to dissolve, replaced by the strength of their connection. We'll figure out the best way to keep you and Lily safe, Ethan said, his mind already strategizing. Tomorrow, we'll meet with a lawyer I trust to help us navigate this. I trust you, Ethan, Grace replied, finding reassurance in his unwavering gaze, a promise of hope and a future worth fighting for. As night fell gently over Miller Mansion, shadows danced across the vast garden, while Vanessa observed from a distance, concealed behind the living room curtains. Her eyes tracked Ethan as he said goodbye to Grace, with a tenderness he might not have even recognized himself. Vanessa absorbed their conversation, the faint whispers carrying their confessions and fears into her ears. When Ethan finally went upstairs, leaving Grace to return to her room, Vanessa saw her opening. She waited patiently, ensuring Grace was gone before quietly following Ethan. Her mind churned, crafting a scheme as calculated as it was dangerous. She knocked lightly on Ethan's door, which swung open after a moment, revealing Ethan's surprised expression. "Vanessa, is everything okay?" he asked, his concern evident. "Oh, Ethan, I'm so sorry to bother you," Vanessa began, her voice quivering, carefully mimicking hesitation. "But I need to tell you something. Something I saw." Ethan, his attention fully captured, stepped aside and motioned for her to enter. "What did you see, Vanessa?" Vanessa stepped into the room, carefully shutting the door behind her as though staging a dramatic entrance. "It's about Grace and her ex-husband. I've seen them meeting in the garden multiple times this week, usually while Carmen was asleep." Ethan's brows knit together, clearly puzzled. "Meeting? What do you mean, Vanessa?" She leaned in, lowering her voice as if confiding a dark secret. "Ethan, they seemed like they were planning something. They were talking, even laughing together. I didn't want to believe my eyes." Her words dripped with a mix of feigned worry and subtle malice. "Do you think it's possible that Grace and her ex are scheming? Maybe to get money from you?" The accusation hit Ethan like a sudden blow. That doesn't make sense. Grace would never do something like that." Vanessa edged closer, resting her hand on Ethan's arm in an overly familiar gesture meant to feign support. "I know it's hard to accept, but think about it. Do you really know her? How did her ex even find her? He didn't just stumble here. She must have contacted him. And now, this. Secret meetings. What if they're planning to run off together? With your money?" Ethan took a step back, his mind swirling as doubt began to take root. "I don't know." Vanessa pressed on, her voice soft but insistent. "Ethan, you've known me forever. You know I'd never lie to you. I'm only saying this because I care." The weight of her words left Ethan torn, his thoughts oscillating between his trust in Grace and the deep loyalty he felt toward Vanessa, who had been a constant presence in his life. The night dragged on, heavy with turmoil and unshakable doubts. He realized he needed clarity, but finding it felt like navigating uncharted waters. Vanessa's accusations weren't just shocking, they were a calculated gamble. She was manipulating Ethan's emotions, steering him away from the truth. Her motives were selfish. She had always wanted Ethan for herself and wasn't about to let anyone stand in her way. The next morning, the tension in the Miller house was palpable. Ethan had spent the night tossing and turning, unable to escape the storm Vanessa had stirred in his mind. Jealousy and suspicion crept into his thoughts, emotions he'd never associated with Grace before. He found her in the kitchen, calmly preparing breakfast like she always did. But today, his perception of her was clouded by the seeds of mistrust Vanessa had sown. "Grace, we need to talk," Ethan said, his voice weighted with an intensity that shifted the atmosphere instantly. Grace turned to him, startled by his tone. "Of course, Ethan. What's wrong?" He hesitated before speaking, the mix of fear and hope evident in his voice. "It's about you and Richard. Vanessa said she saw you two meeting in the garden. Secretly. Is that true?" Grace froze, the accusation hitting her like a physical blow. It felt as though the ground beneath her had given way, leaving her reeling. "What?" "Ethan, that's ridiculous. I would never do something like that. Everything that happened when he came here, I told you about it. Why would you believe something like that? I don't know what to believe, Grace. Vanessa seems so sure. I've known her for years. But you I've only known for a short time. What if you're working with him? What if this is all a plan to take money from me?" Ethan's words came out quickly, driven more by confusion than by reason. "Ethan, you've only known me for a short time, but by now, you should have a sense of my character. Do you really think I would use my daughter, our situation, to deceive you?" Grace replied, the indignation and pain clear in her voice. "I just don't know," Ethan admitted, the doubt eating away at any certainty he had felt before. The argument escalated quickly, each word from Ethan tinged with suspicion, each response from Grace filled with disillusionment and sadness, feeling betrayed by Ethan's lack of trust. Grace made a rash decision, but at that moment, it seemed like the only option. "If that's how you feel, then I can't stay," Grace said, her decision firm despite her broken heart. With trembling hands, she began gathering her things, each movement a testament to her pain and despair. Ethan, still lost in doubt and confusion, watched, unable to form the words that could stop her. "Grace, please, we can talk about this. It doesn't have to be this way," Ethan tried, his voice reflecting the internal struggle between pride and the fear of losing something precious. "There's nothing more to talk about, Ethan. If you can't trust me, then there's no reason for me to stay," Grace responded, firm despite the evident pain in her expression. "But what if this is a misunderstanding? What if this is a mistake? I'll talk to Vanessa again. We can have a civilized conversation between the three of us," Ethan pressed, desperate to find a way to reverse the situation. "The mistake was believing that we could be a family, that I could belong here," Grace said, tears beginning to escape as she held Lily in one hand and a suitcase in the other. It was then that Carmen entered the room, drawn by the sound of the argument. She looked at Grace and Ethan, immediately grasping the gravity of the situation. "Grace, my dear, what's going on? Why are you holding those suitcases?" Carmen asked, confused and concerned. Grace, looking into Carmen's eyes, tried to mask her anguish with a trembling smile. "I just think it's better for everyone if Lily and I leave for a while. Mom, this is. It's a misunderstanding. Vanessa said something," and Ethan began to explain. But Carmen's expression cut him off, her disappointment clear. "Vanessa, what does she have to do with this?" Carmen inquired, suspicion growing in her voice. "It doesn't matter anymore," Grace cut in, avoiding Carmen's eyes. I have to leave. Please take care of yourself, Mrs. Carmen, and thank you for everything." Carmen stepped closer, wrapping both Grace and Lily in a warm embrace. "You don't have to do this. Whatever's going on, we can figure it out together." Grace's voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm sorry." For a moment, she allowed herself to sink into Carmen's arms, but then pulled away, her resolve written clearly on her face. With Lily at her side, she cast a final glance at Ethan, a look that carried the weight of broken promises and lost dreams. Then, without another word, she walked through the door, leaving behind a silence heavy with unanswered questions and shattered hearts. Carmen turned to Ethan, searching for answers, but in his face she saw the same sadness and confusion that mirrored her own. "Ethan, what happened? What did you do?" she asked. He sank onto the couch, his expression tired and defeated. "I don't know, Mum. I'm so lost right now." In the now quiet living room, Ethan and Carmen sat across from each other, the tension thick in the air. The soft glow of the evening light painted faint shadows, making the mood even heavier. "Ethan, I need you to explain this to me," Carmen said, her voice a mix of worry and disbelief. "Why did Grace leave? And what exactly did Vanessa tell you?" Ethan let out a long sigh, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "Mum, Vanessa came to me last night. She told me she saw Grace meeting with Richard in the garden, that they were planning something, maybe even plotting to take money from me." Carmen's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "And you believed her, without even talking to Grace about it?" Ethan looked away, shame in his expression. "I confronted Grace this morning," he admitted. "I was so confused. Vanessa seemed so sure, and the thought of Grace working with Richard, I didn't know what to believe." Carmen shook her head, searching for clarity. "Ethan, Vanessa might have misunderstood, or she might just be wrong. But this doesn't make sense. Grace has never given us a reason not to trust her," Carmen continued, her voice firm. "This whole story, it's so out of character for her." Ethan nodded, his voice trembling. "I see that now, Mum. But when I brought it up to Grace, everything spiraled. She was hurt, so hurt that I didn't trust her. And then she left." Carmen pressed her hands to her temples, trying to piece together the chain of events that had led to this moment. "This is a mess, Ethan. Vanessa, she shouldn't have made these claims without evidence. And you should have trusted Grace more." Ethan's voice cracked with regret. "I know that now. But it's too late. She's gone, Mum, and it feels like she took a piece of me with her." Carmen, though clearly shaken, kept her composure. "First, we need to talk to Vanessa," she said firmly. "We need to understand why she said what she did, and if there's any truth to it. Ethan, you've got to make this right. You need to find Grace and talk to her, apologize. Let her know you trust her and believe in her," Carmen urged. "What if she doesn't want to hear me out?" "What if I'm too late?" Ethan asked, his voice heavy with regret, the weight of his mistakes evident in his expression. Carmen reached out, holding Ethan's hands gently, offering a steadying presence. "It's never too late to fix something you care about, son. But you have to move quickly and be sincere. Grace needs to feel that you're on her side, especially now." Her words seemed to ignite a spark of determination within Ethan. "You're right, Mum. I'm going to find her. I need to show her I was wrong, and that we need her in our lives." With a deep breath, Ethan stood up, purpose shining in his eyes. "I'll grab the car keys and head out now," he declared. As Ethan rushed upstairs, resolve propelling him forward, he passed through the dimly lit hallway. Suddenly he stopped in his tracks. Vanessa's bedroom door was slightly open, and her voice drifted out, sharp and clear, impossible to ignore. "Yes, Richard, you followed the plan perfectly. They're apart now. And Ethan, he doesn't suspect a thing." Vanessa's tone oozed satisfaction. "He bought every single word I said about Grace and you." Ethan froze, his heart pounding. A mix of anger and disbelief washed over him as he listened, unable to tear himself away from her words. It was smart to hire that detective to track her down. You played your part flawlessly, and Grace was completely terrified. "Oh, and don't worry about the money. I'll send over the payment we agreed on as soon as I'm off the phone. You earned every penny." Fighting the storm of emotions boiling inside him, Ethan inhaled deeply to steady himself. His hands trembled as he pushed the door open and stepped into the room. Startled, Vanessa spun around, phone still clutched in her hand. "Ethan! What are you doing here?" she stuttered, caught off guard. "So it was all a setup," Ethan said, his voice low but charged with hurt and fury. "You and Richard planned this, every bit of it." Vanessa attempted to regain her poise, forcing a smile. "Ethan, sweetheart, you've got it all wrong. I can explain." "Don't even try," Ethan snapped, cutting her off. "I heard everything. How could you? Grace didn't do anything wrong, and you—" He paused, his voice breaking with emotion. "You tore us apart. You planned it all." Realizing there was no escape, Vanessa sighed, her shoulders dropping in resignation. "Fine," she admitted bitterly. "Yes, I did it. Because you're mine, Ethan. You've always been mine. And that woman, she was in the way. I only did what had to be done." What had to be done? "Vanessa, you didn't just cross a line. You toyed with people's feelings like they were meaningless. Grace and Lily could have lost everything because of your selfishness," Ethan said, his voice thick with contempt. "I just wanted you, Ethan. Can't you see? I love you," Vanessa pleaded, her desperation painted across her face. "Love? This isn't love, Vanessa. It's obsession. And because of it, you've shattered any trust I had in you," Ethan shot back, his tone final and unwavering. "So what now? You're just going to erase me from your life?" Vanessa challenged, though a hint of resignation began creeping into her voice. "Yes, Vanessa. You need to leave. I need time to sort out this disaster you've created. And you need to figure out what's wrong with your actions," Ethan replied firmly, drawing a boundary she could no longer ignore. Realizing she had no fight left, Vanessa nodded silently, accepting defeat. She began gathering her belongings, her hands trembling, while Ethan, his heart heavy with the weight of what was lost, was already thinking of how to make things right with Grace. Ethan climbed into the car with John, his trusted driver, a determined look in his eyes. The sun had dipped below the horizon, and the streets of his hometown, usually calm and predictable, now felt like a maze of unanswered questions and endless possibilities. "Do you have any idea where she might have gone, sir?" John asked, glancing at Ethan through the rearview mirror as he started the engine. "I'm not sure," Ethan admitted, his voice tinged with anxiety. "But let's check the parks first. Grace likes taking Lily there." The car moved steadily through the dimly lit streets. Ethan's gaze never left the window, his eyes scanning every passing figure, every silhouette, desperate for even the smallest glimpse of Grace and Lily. "Mr. Ethan," John began cautiously, "if I may, Miss Grace looked deeply hurt. What will you say to her if we find her?" "I don't know, John," Ethan confessed, his voice low and strained. "I need to apologize, to tell her how wrong I was. It was all a misunderstanding, and I was a fool. I hope she'll hear me out." They drove past the first park, meticulously searching every bench and corner where Grace might have sought refuge. But there was no sign of her or Lily. Frustration started to blend with fear, the fear of running out of time. "Sir," John offered, "Miss Grace once mentioned she liked the fruit at a small grocery store nearby. Maybe we could try there." "Good thinking, John. Let's go," Ethan agreed, grateful for the suggestion. As they neared the grocery store, Ethan's heart raced, torn between hope and dread. He prayed silently that they would find her, that it wasn't too late to fix what had been broken. They pulled into a parking spot and stepped out, scanning the area carefully while calling out Grace's name in low voices, trying not to draw attention from others nearby. "Mr. Ethan, look," John suddenly said, his finger pointing toward a figure seated on a bench beneath the gentle glow of a street lamp. It was Grace. She held Lily close in one arm, a grocery bag resting beside her, likely filled with items bought with the money she'd earned from a month of caring for Carmen. Mother and daughter clung to each other, bracing against the chilly evening air. Ethan's heart pounded as he broke into a run toward them. Every emotion, fear, desperation, hope, propelling him forward. "Grace," he called out, his voice thick with emotion. At the sound of her name, Grace turned, her face registering a mix of surprise and caution as she saw Ethan approach. "Ethan, what are you doing here? What do you want? Haven't I had enough humiliation for one day?" she asked, her tone laced with hurt. Ethan stopped a few steps away, his hands raised in a pleading gesture. "I came to find you. We need to talk, Grace, please," he said softly. Under the dim light of the street lamps, now casting their glow as darkness crept in, they stood across from each other, the tension between them palpable. Lily, asleep in Grace's arms, remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. Ethan's voice wavered as he broke the silence. "I don't even know how to begin," he admitted, his words heavy with regret. "I was so foolish. I let Vanessa's lies make me doubt where I should have trusted." Grace's expression softened slightly, a blend of wariness and longing in her gaze. "Ethan, I was terrified of what Richard might do. And then, when you doubted me," her voice faltered, "it felt like I had lost everything." Ethan's head hung low. "I never should have doubted you, or us," he said, his voice cracking. "Vanessa manipulated everything, played on our insecurities. I should have seen through her lies." The pain in his confession was unmistakable. Grace shook her head, her brows knit in frustration and sadness. "But why, Ethan? Why did you let her get to you like that?" she asked, her voice sharp with the need to understand, to close the rift that betrayal had caused. "Because deep down, I was scared of losing you. Scared I wasn't enough for you," Ethan admitted, his vulnerability laid bare. "And the things Vanessa said, they struck right at those fears." Grace exhaled deeply, her emotions playing across her face. "Ethan, I came here with Lily to start over, to leave behind everything painful. And you gave us hope. You gave us kindness. But when you doubted me, it felt like all of that was falling apart." Ethan's voice grew steadier, though his eyes were filled with anguish. "I know, Grace, and I hate myself for it. If I could take it all back, I would. All I want now is to earn back your trust, to show you I'm the man you and Lily deserve." His words carried a weighty sincerity, each one a quiet promise. Grace didn't respond right away. The silence between them, thick with the gravity of everything unsaid, the quiet between them was laden with the weight of unsaid emotions and hidden thoughts. Finally, Grace broke the silence, her tone steadier than before. "Ethan, I want to trust you. I want to believe we can have a fresh start, leave the past behind. But this is going to take time, and more than just words." "I know," Ethan replied, his voice filled with sincerity. "And I'm ready to give it all the time it needs. I'll do whatever it takes. Grace, I love you. This journey, though marked by doubt and fear, has shown me just how much I need you and Lily in my life." His face was radiant with love and determination. Grace, tears glistening in her eyes, allowed herself to embrace the truth. "I love you too, Ethan, and I'm willing to try. For us, for Lily. Let's rebuild this together." Ethan gently caressed Grace's face, his hand running through her hair as he leaned closer. Their breaths mingled, heavy with emotions long suppressed, and he kissed her deeply. Their love, fragmented by fear and misunderstandings, began to mend, united by their courage to forgive and the promise of a brighter future as a family. When Ethan and Grace walked into Miller House hand in hand, they were greeted by the worried silhouette of Carmen waiting in the living room. "Mum, we're back," Ethan said, his voice a blend of relief and resolve. Carmen rose quickly, moving toward them. Her concerned expression softened as she noticed the hopeful glow on Grace's face. "My dears, I was so worried. Grace, honey, are you okay?" Carmen asked, wrapping Grace in a motherly embrace. Touched by the warmth, Grace replied, "Yes, Mrs. Carmen, I'm fine. Thanks to Ethan, we're taking a new step toward our future." Carmen's eyes glistened with gratitude as she looked at Ethan. "Ethan, it seems you've worked things out, haven't you, my son?" she asked. Ethan exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. "Yes, Mom. Vanessa wasn't truthful with us. She confessed, and we've resolved everything. I promised Grace I'd ensure nothing like that ever happens again." Carmen gave a gentle smile. Somewhere in the background, Vanessa slipped away quietly, avoiding goodbyes. Though the worry still lingered, a sense of renewal began to bloom, bolstered by their shared commitment to protect and heal. The next morning, after a night of heartfelt conversations and planning, Ethan met with his legal team, determined to eliminate Richard's threat for good. "Gentlemen, I want to ensure Richard stays away from Grace and Lily. He's caused enough harm," Ethan said, his voice resolute. "We understand, Mr. Miller," the lead lawyer responded. "We've already secured a restraining order against him, and after yesterday's discussion, it's unlikely he'll make another move." The lawyer handed Ethan a stack of documents, solidifying the next steps in their fight to protect their family. "And what about Vanessa? She was the architect of this whole plan," Ethan questioned, the anger still simmering in his voice. "We're dealing with that as well, Mr. Miller. Ms. Vanessa has already been informed of the legal consequences of her actions. She will no longer be a problem," the lawyer assured. Ethan nodded, relieved, but still pondering the twists his life had taken. "Thank you, gentlemen. I just want to move forward, with no more surprises or manipulations. You have our word, Mr. Miller. We'll do everything in our power to protect you and your family," the lawyer affirmed, extending his hand to seal the commitment. Back at the Miller house, Ethan shared the news with Grace and Carmen, who received the information with a mixture of relief and gratitude. "This means we can finally start rebuilding without looking back," Grace said, a cautious smile on her lips. "Yes, Grace, and this time we'll do everything right." "Together," Ethan agreed, holding her hand with tenderness. Carmen, watching them, felt a wave of contentment. "I see a bright future for you too, and for little Lily, as a family." And so, with renewed promises and lighter hearts, they began to plan their future together. A future where love, trust, and protection would be the foundation of their new life. If you watched the story of Ethan, Grace, and Lily, you probably felt the emotional impact and learned some powerful lessons. Now, let's talk about how you can take those lessons and apply them to your own life. One of the first lessons this story shows us is the power of empathy and kindness. Even though Ethan was in a hurry, he stopped to help Grace and Lily, and that small act of kindness made a huge difference. So, how can you bring that same kindness into your own life? Start by committing to doing at least one kind action each day without expecting anything in return. It could be something as simple as helping someone carry their groceries, offering a smile, or giving someone a word of encouragement. One way to make this a regular habit is to keep a kindness journal. In it, you can write down your small acts of kindness each day and reflect on how these actions affect your mood and the people around you. Practicing empathy consciously can have a big impact on your everyday life. Another important lesson from the story is the value of trust. Ethan's lack of trust almost destroyed his relationship with Grace, but by working to rebuild that trust, he was able to fix his mistake and restore their connection. You can do the same by strengthening the trust in your own relationships. Choose someone close to you and focus on building mutual trust by sharing something personal or listening actively without judgment. And remember to practice honest communication. Ask yourself each day if you are clear in your words and actions. When misunderstandings come up, try to address them as soon as possible to prevent distrust from growing. The narrative emphasizes how vital resilience is when facing life's challenges. Grace experienced numerous hardships, yet her determination allowed her to persevere, safeguard her daughter, and work toward a fresh start. You can cultivate this same resilience in your life by setting aside moments each day for reflection. Think about the obstacles you encountered and note down the lessons they taught you. Viewing challenges as opportunities to grow can help you build stronger resilience over time. Establish a daily self-care routine. This might involve taking a walk, practicing mindfulness, or dedicating time to unwind and mentally recharge. Prioritizing your well-being equips you to tackle whatever comes your way with greater strength and clarity. So, what step will you take today? Consider performing a small act of kindness, engaging in an honest conversation with someone who matters to you, or finding a way to invest in your own self-care. These simple actions may seem minor, but incorporating them into your daily life can bring meaningful transformation to your overall well-being and relationships. If this message resonates with you and you'd like to see more content like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell to stay informed about new videos.